It is a momentous day, kids. The big reno is very, very, very nearly finished. We are tiptoeing up to the finish line, and I am realizing again just the incredible existential lightness and optimism and happiness that comes with restoring order in my environment. I'm going to talk a little bit about that on this episode because it just feels so freaking good. Maybe it can be instructive for you too. I want to thank you for being here on what is a very, very special day for all of us, and we'll get to it on the other side. Hello, you're listening to the John Huff Podcast. Oh, yay. Ladies and gentlemen, kids of all ages, today is a momentous day. Now, if you are listening to this on release day, it is, as you will know, All Saints' Day, and that is the one day of the year when we all pause collectively as a civilization, as a species, to honor and respect and pay our reverence to the British girl band All Saints, who brought us over the years such edifying and spiritually uplifting tunes as Booty Call. Let us now read from Booty Call. Bring it on, bring it on now. Bring it on, bring it on now. Never stop giving good love, 'cause that's what I call you for. Never stop, baby, give it up. 'Cause I know where it came from. You got more. I like playing games. And if it's all the same, you can bring it on with the rough stuff. Give me your love. I don't want to be tamed. I need a man to be a real man in order of what I got in store. Always finish what you start, baby. And always having me beg for more. You know I want to be a diggy down boy, but I don't get around. Jimmy has to ride in your pocket or lock him in your wallet. It's just a booty call. Bring it on, bring it on now. It's a booty call. Bring it on, bring it on now. It's just a booty call. Bring it on, bring it on now. It's a booty call. Bring it on, bring it on now. Fast forward. It's a booty call. 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 It's a booty. Dear Lord, thank you for All Saints, who we pay our tribute to today on All Saints' Day. I'm kidding. I'm a kidder. It is an auspicious day, kids, because I am, as promised, back in my, for the first time in 4 freaking months, little studio. Insert crowd cheering sound effect here. And I don't know how good it sounds. The renovation is not finished. All right, the renovation is not finished, but it is so close now. And we are close enough that we have begun to rebuild. We have begun to restore order on the one floor of our house that has been ripped apart since the end of freaking June. And I'm back in the little studio. I got my desk in here. I have brought in some sound baffling that I bought, but the room is not properly sound treated yet. So it's possible that there will be some echo. I hope not. Once I get some curtains up, once I get the sound baffling positioned a little bit better, get it mounted, everything should sound okay. And there are like creaks and cracks, stuff that I'd forgotten in this room, because there's a vent, of course, that runs through the ceiling. There is a vent cover there, but you can hear stuff happening in the vents when the heater is on. Hopefully that will not come through on the microphone. If it does, it's a chance to celebrate. If it does come through, then it is us acknowledging the accomplishment of almost being done. This renovation that has taken so much longer than was expected. But I've talked about this before. It's mostly my fault for not having the ducks in a row. And this is not an episode about the renovation. It's just, it feels so freaking good. It feels so freaking good to be sitting in this space again. And I've reconfigured the layout of furniture. It's inspiring. I'm telling you straight up, kids, it's actually inspiring to be sitting here in my little studio, even though it's not done and even though the sound isn't as good as hopefully it's going to be. It's just so inspiring and it feels really, really good. I'm sitting in a clean, ordered space and I'm just noticing how good that feels. Like we began moving the furniture in yesterday, actually. I'm recording on Manic Monday. And so yesterday, after a Saturday full of Halloweening, yeah, some interesting stuff happened on Saturday. May or may not tell you about it. Sunday, we started, finishing up the final cleaning and then moving stuff back into the TV room, moving stuff back into the office. And it just it came with this lift, It came with this surge of energy and excitement and just these really positive feelings. And it's made me wonder how much over the past 4 months, the insane clutter and the upside down nature of our space has affected me, has affected my creative impulses, has affected my enthusiasm, has just affected my mental health. Your home, kids, is supposed to be a safe haven. Your home is supposed to be the place where you can retreat from the chaos of the world into a space that is yours, that is comfortable, that is hopefully ordered, and a place where you want to be. I know that's not the case for everybody, but over the past 4 months, we've kind of gotten used to this clutter, but I have also noticed just at times an extreme agitation. And that can simply be, I'm trying to get somewhere in my house and I'm tripping over something that shouldn't be there. It should be downstairs in storage, but we can't get to downstairs in storage because it's so piled with stuff everywhere. And I want to say right now, I want to extend a sincere, heartfelt gratitude, a thank you, to the bands, to the musicians who have come into my home to rehearse in the jam space and have put up with the insane mess that's down there. I have been trying throughout this process to carve out a space that we can be comfortable in, that has enough room that we can actually work in. So my shout out to everybody in Lindsay and the Lonelies, Collective Evolution, Fresh Breath, of course. You guys are troopers. I thank you so much for putting up with what has been a distasteful situation in terms of the comfort levels around here. But your home is supposed to be a safe, comfortable space, man. Not a space, man. A space, man. And mine has not been that, and now I wonder how much that has affected my mood, how much that has affected my enthusiasms. Over the past few months, I've struggled just a little bit to want to practice the drums. It's just, I have not felt the impetus. I have not felt the impulse. I just haven't wanted to. I've done my diligence. I've prepped for gigs. I've gotten ready for some recording, whatever. I've done the professional thing. But the enthusiasm to just be in that space working has not been there. And, my computer has been in a different room, setting up on the kitchen table, whatever. It just has not been an inspiring living environment, nor a comfortable one. And now, as soon as we started pulling stuff into what is my little studio, which is my office yesterday, I began to feel this surge of enthusiasm. This sense of wanting to be in this space and wanting to work in this space. It is amazing to me, still, always, how much your environment affects your mental state, affects your enthusiasm, affects your happiness, positive and negative. And there is psychology to go with this, okay? I looked into this because I have felt so viscerally the effect of clutter in my life, and then how different it feels when you exercise, when you release, when you get rid of that clutter and create an ordered space. I know that it's affected me in profound ways mentally. And I'm not the only one. You know, what I've learned in my 50 years on this planet is that nobody's all that unique, you know. Your reactions to things, the problems you have, whatever you run into, it's pretty universal, man. And so I know that there are people out there right now who are equally affected by clutter, by a mess, you know, and it is really an agitation to me. So I looked into how does clutter affect people psychologically. All right, this is not hearsay. This is stuff that's pulled out of studies that smart people have done. So clutter is linked to increased stress. All right, I totally get that. If you can't find things you're looking for example, that creates stress. If there's just a chaos in your living space, that creates stress too, you know? Stuff everywhere, that gets on people. You know, we were not designed, we did not evolve to have a bunch of stuff. I've talked before. Hunters, gatherers, nomads, people on the move. We had to travel lean, man. And I think there is still a part of our DNA. There is something genetic in us about this notion of having space. You know, if you feel cluttered and you feel as though you do not have space, that's like walls closing in on you, man. That is like a prison cell almost. And it becomes so much more expansive when you create the space, physically expansive, mentally expansive. So yeah, having clutter increases stress. Having clutter makes it difficult to concentrate because there's too much to look at. There's too much stimulation everywhere. And if you're bothered by it, and I think most people are, if you are bothered by all this crap everywhere, you can't focus on that either. You know, creatively, you need to be in a certain headspace in order to be the conduit for the creative work. And if you are in a space that is not organized, that is not comfortable, that does not create that sort of freedom for you, it's very difficult to focus and very difficult to be creative. Clutter can create difficulty in your relationships. If you are in a relationship where one person's kind of a hoarder, or one person makes a big mess all the time, doesn't clean it up, just leaves stuff everywhere, and the other person don't like that and is more of an organized or neat person, that creates a conflict, right? That creates a problem right there. And then your home becomes very much less comfortable, very much less a place you want to be. You can develop negative feelings about your home, right? Because you're like, I can't even put my finger on why exactly, but I don't like being at home. It doesn't feel good. Well, maybe the reason is your home is a freaking mess. Or your apartment, or your office at work, or your desk space, your cubicle, whatever, your car. Don't like being there because it's a mess. And sometimes you're not even aware of it. You just know that there's an uncomfortable feeling and you don't want to be there, and you don't want that in your home. Again, your home is supposed to be a safe haven, a comfortable place where you can rest, relax, tune out the world, have positive vibes, man. And a lot of clutter, at least for people like me, does not create positive vibes. It creates feelings of agitation, and I have felt that so much. Over the past 4 months, so much have I felt these feelings of agitation because you walk into the room, say, the dining room, the living room, and there's boxes piled, and there's way too much furniture crammed into this space, and you're falling over stuff, can't find things, stepping on stuff. You go down, you know, one whole floor of your house is just empty, or it's full of construction materials, dust. It's a mess. You go down to your jam space. You're like, I'm going to get on my drums, maybe work for a while. But there's stuff piled everywhere. You have to crawl over stuff to get to your drums. Now, I've played stages where I had to crawl all over stuff to get to my drums. That's not a clutter thing. That's a small stage thing. All right, kids. It's a real blessing when you play a big stage. Wow. Like I watch videos right now of Metallica playing, And their stage is huge. And it's like it's too big. They're not even connected to each other. But Lars has got room to like get up and walk around. There's nothing behind his drums. He's got all this freaking space. And I'm picturing a club I played a couple times in Germany where I'm shoehorned into the corner of this sort of corner stage looking out. And my hi-hat is basically touching a wall on one side, and my ride cymbal is touching a wall on the other. And I literally have to crawl over this stuff to get behind the kit at all. That's an agitation. But, it makes me think of how even a cluttered drum set can cause agitation. There are a few times when I feel more inspired than when I just eliminate something from my drum set. I've said many times, my favorite setup is a 3-piece kick, floor, snare, crash cymbal, ride cymbal, hi-hats. And that, to me, when I break down my kit, normally I have an extra rack tom up top, the 4-piece setup, which for most people is also a very minimal setup. But I like to go a step even beyond that. And there's just this real sense of freedom, this openness, this lightness that comes when I take away that rack tom. And it's just the 3-piece, and then we go. Most of the Sarah Smith Europe touring, I did that way because I love that setup, and it takes up less space in the van, right? There's a practical side to that. But it's the same freaking deal. Like, you can be on a cluttered stage that sucks. I love a minimalist, simple, clean drum setup. And I'm still looking for the musical situation where that can be my full-time setup. It's difficult to do. Even if I'm in a band where that setup applies, and that's all I need for the gig, a lot of times you're playing with other bands, so somebody else is backlining the kit. They've got their drum set up. It has the rack tom on it. And you've got to stick with it and go with it because that's the drums that are being played that night. Or I'm backlining the show. And as a courtesy, I'll bring the rack tom because most other bands are going to use it, right? And you can say, well, just don't use the rack tom. You can leave it there and don't use it. Yeah, I understand that. But it doesn't have the same feeling of lightness. It has a feeling of agitation in that circumstance because I want to just play the 3-piece, and I love so much the feeling of that. And I can't because the rack tom's there. Even if I don't use it, it's there. And it does not have the same visual appeal to me. It does not have the same aesthetic inside or out. You know what I mean? So even a cluttered drum set can drive you freaking crazy, right? Go into your jam space as it is right now, or has been until a day ago, and it's just a cluttered chaos of stuff, and you sense this agitation that comes with that, and feelings of overwhelm. That's another psychological reaction to a ton of clutter everywhere. It's like there's just stuff everywhere. Too much stimulation. This stuff has, in my view, existential weight, man. What you have on the outside, you feel on the inside. And then you're like, I need to clean this up. And then you look around and you're like, where do we even start? We had that problem. The first phase of this renovation was let's get rid of stuff. Now, we had a big bin, rented the big bin. It was like 8 by 10 by 20, something like it was a big bin. And that was for building materials, right? We were ripping out carpet. We were tearing down wood paneling. And then it's like, let's fill this thing with as much crap as we can get rid of, man. And then you walk down into our storage area, which is adjacent to our part of the jam space, and you just see all the stuff, and feelings of overwhelm just come over you. It's like, where do you even begin with this? Where do we even start? And then you pick a place and you start. But that initial reaction is like, I can't handle this. And you walk away. And what can happen is you develop a sense of shame. You develop a sense of shame around the state of your home and how you've allowed it to get this way, right? Or the state of your office or the state of your car. It is not a comfortable place to be. It's not a place you want to be. It's not an inspiring place to be. Aesthetics count. We react visually. We react internally to aesthetic. And a lot of the times what we want is a clean aesthetic. Things organized, things ordered, things in their own place. I used to do this all the time. When I was working a regular office job, over the space of a few months, stuff would just accumulate. Back in those days, a lot of paperwork, stuff here, stuff there, put a pile here, put a pile there. It's dirty, it's dusty, there's a pen, there's an old notepad somewhere. And I would get to be feeling just not happy being at work. Now, there were probably other reasons for that, big existential stuff. But then there would come this huge surge when I would just take a slow afternoon and just clean it up, throw stuff out, get out the cloth, wipe off the desk, wipe off the computer, get rid of all the stuff, and then create again this ordered space on my desk. And then suddenly everything feels lighter and I'm more happy at work and I'm, determined to do better. That's the other thing. That's the other weird side of this. So when you clean up your space, at least in my case, I'm sitting in this space right now, which is not fully complete yet, not fully sound treated, but just being in this space makes me want to do better. It makes me want to create something in here. You do that in your office at work, and you'll get an uptick. You'll get an upsurge in your feeling about the place because it just feels better. It feels ordered, and then in a week or so, you hate the place again. But in that moment, it's a really great feeling. And I always love washing my car. One of my favorite things, one of my favorite times of year is spring. When you get that first kind of really nice sunny day and it's warm, you can be outside in a t-shirt and you get the vacuum cleaner out, you get the Armor All, and you just wipe the winter and vacuum the winter out of your car. You clean it up and you shine everything up, clean the leather, clean the outside, and then the car is clean, ordered. I always had this saying in my mind, a clean car runs better. It doesn't, but my perception is a clean car just runs better. And I love that feeling. I love that feeling of the first cleaning of the car every year. I used to clean up my office. There were times when I was in high school, the beginning of every year, September, I would briefly commit myself to doing better, being a little bit more diligent. I was not a diligent student in high school. In fact, yesterday, as we were packing up more stuff, I uncovered a whole stack of report cards from back in those days. Made for some compelling reading, all right. But at the beginning of the year, I would get myself organized, clean up my room a bit, get my notebooks ready. We're going to do it this year. We're going to crush it. And then, a couple weeks in, I don't care anymore. But that feeling of having things ordered and organized feels so much better. So you're walking into your house. It's a mess. There's so much stuff to get rid of. You don't know where to begin. There's that overwhelm. You have this sense of shame and guilt about the state of things. This is not conducive, A, to peace of mind, but B, to any sort of creative endeavor, right? All of this comes as a result of the clutter. And I wonder the extent to which the clutter has affected me over the past 4 months. In the early days, it's like, okay, you're kind of occupied with stuff that's going on in the reno, all right? We're tearing stuff out. That's fun and novel and exciting. We're starting off on an adventure, starting off on a journey, there and back again. But then over time, that novelty sure goes away, and then you're staring at the space. I've talked earlier this summer about the kind of moment where it was overwhelming to me to be in the midst of that. The drywall had just gone up. There was an unholy mess everywhere. We were, maybe a month into this process at that point. It was weighing on me. Now we got this mess. Now we don't really know the next steps. It's overwhelming. It's heavy. It's chaos. It's frustrating. And so there were times when this poked out of me. The overwhelm of not really knowing what's going on or when things are going to be done or bloody how we were going to do some of these things. Who was going to help us? The mess, dust, the clutter everywhere. I really felt that. And I think it probably follows hard upon that I haven't felt all that much like digging into the drums. I have not felt like creating really much of anything, although I've soldiered away with this podcast, and that's been kind of a good anchoring thing, actually. But I wonder, and I wonder for you, faithful listener, I wonder if you in your home feel this agitation, feel this sense of shame or guilt, even subtly without realizing it, or you just feel this general irritation that is not necessarily the fault of your spouse or significant other, but in fact, the state of things. Having all this stuff has existential weight. And there is a spiritual principle, maybe more than one, that goes with this. That old Hermetic law, as above, so below, as within, so without. There's this notion, again, I say these things, this clutter has existential weight. This affects you. This notion that what you see on the outside, the world is a mirror, the world is a reflection. As without, so within. As within, so without. What you feel, what you're like on the inside, becomes manifest on the outside. And so if you're looking around, or vice versa, if you're looking around and you feel in yourself a sense of clutter and chaos, or if that is what's going on in your life, take a look at your space. Is that reflected in your space? I think it's difficult to feel a sense of overwhelming chaos in a very ordered space. And so I wonder, again, if they play off of each other. I've been living in this chaos for 4 months, and has there been a corresponding chaos within? Maybe so, and I wonder that for you. And I like the spiritual angle on this. Your space. I read a couple of really interesting quotes in poking around on this, right? There's a quote I read by this cat called Shukai Matsumoto. Shukai Matsumoto. It's one of those Japanese names that I have trouble pronouncing based on the spelling. Shoukei. That's unusual. Matsumoto-san, is a Buddhist monk, lives in Tokyo, wrote this book called A Monk's Guide to a Clean House and Mind. Buddhism is very minimalist, very orderly, right? And his quote in this article I read was, in Japanese Buddhism, we don't separate a self from its environment. And cleaning expresses our respect for and sense of wholeness with the world that surrounds us. I love the spiritual angle on this. Cleaning your space, having an ordered and peaceful and gentle space, is a sign of reverence, is a sign of respect for yourself, respect for your existential spiritual self as well. It's giving your physical body and your spirit, your soul, an ordered and comfortable and gentle and peaceful place to stay, to live, to rest. This peaceful angle is very, very important. I also ran across a website, wholeandhome.com. That's WHOLE. And this girl, Daisy, she's a professional organizer, all right? You call her up to help you sort this stuff out. When you look after your home, she says, you look after yourself, right? When you look after your home, you look after yourself. And then there's this whole notion of feng shui. This idea that there's energy in a room, that there's energy in objects, and that the way that you place those objects together in a room creates a positive energy flow or creates kind of a blocked energy flow. This is the whole principle of feng shui. That was a big thing a while ago. Several years back, everybody was doing the feng shui. And I think there's something to it. If you think of everything having energy, all of a sudden you've got all this clutter. There's all this energy in your environment, which is heavy. It's got weight. This is what I keep coming back to. It's like when you get rid of all that stuff, this incredible feeling of lightness comes over you. And it can only be that stuff has weight, and you let it go and you release it. And then some of the stuff, if you really go hardcore on this, a lot of what we threw away with the renovation was our childhood and adolescent memories. We threw away years of history here, man. I said on an earlier episode, my entire physical photo collection's down to like 10 photos. We threw away thousands, I think, of photographs. And we threw away old mementos, old stuff that we were holding on to from decades ago. And there's such a lightness in releasing that because it's like you're letting go of a past, clearing space for a future. When you get rid of stuff, you create space for something new. Now, I'm not saying the idea is to create space for new stuff and then that can become your clutter. I'm talking spiritually, existentially. You get rid of this clutter in your mind, this clutter in your spirit, this clutter in your energy, and it creates space for new ideas, new projects, new stuff to focus on. It disconnects you from a past to create a focus on a future. That's really what happens here. And as I just said, I felt that as soon as we started moving my desk back in here and one shelf, and it just felt so inspiring. I want to be in this space. I want to be doing stuff in this space. And can you say that about your house? The past 4 months has not felt good. And I've been agitated and irritated. I suspect my spouse or significant other has too. And I wonder how much that plays into it. It's really interesting when you look at this in hindsight, how you see the dots kind of connecting. And now we're so close to this being done. And the space feels nice and it looks good and we're proud of it. I've been asking myself, is it worth it? Over the course of this reno, I've been asking myself, is it worth it? All of this that we're going through, is it worth it? And yeah, it is. And it had to be done. I mean, the carpet that we took out was a biohazard. And the walls, the old wood paneling, almost 50 years old, was buckling and falling apart. Like, it had to be done. We could have done it in a more streamlined way, a more organized way. That's a live and learn kind of thing. Was it worth it? Yeah. So worth it. And now I sit in this room and I'm like, maybe I'll write again. I don't know. Like, it just feels so light, so positive. It feels so good. And I can't wait for it to be ultimately finished, and then we're in the space and we're moving forward again. I felt like I haven't been moving forward for the past 4 months. We've been stuck in clutter. We've been stuck in piles of stuff. We haven't been able to mentally project and move forward because we've been so anchored by the mess in our freaking house and the next step that has to happen in the reno and this thing that has to finish, before we can move on mentally into the great wide open. We're getting there now, and I'm beginning to sense that again. And it's really exciting, and I'm really looking forward to going down into my jam space and having so much more room now because we threw out so much stuff that was on that level. And I'm so stoked about reorganizing it, cleaning it, putting it into a better configuration. There's something so potent about just changing even the configuration of the furniture in your room. Like, it's just an interesting and exciting and novel thing to do. It's a great problem to solve. And then you change where your TV is, where your furniture is, and it's a new space. And it just opens up, again, a future. It's this novelty, this newness. We get stuck in oldness. And changing your furniture around just is a new perspective. It's one of the great things about changing your drum setup, changing your drum configuration, or if you're a guitar player, working with some different pedals or whatever. It's like when you begin experimenting with new novel things, it creates new novel sounds, right? And so I'm going to do that in the jam space. I'm going to reconfigure it. I'm going to tidy it up more. And we're going to have so much more space now. It's just going to be a great place to be. It's going to be an inspiring place to be. For me as a drummer, working on stuff, hopefully for bands coming in. I'm just excited about that. And I have not been excited for a long time. I have not been excited for 4 months. And even before that, I wasn't, because we knew this reno had to happen. And then a lot of overwhelm comes with that because we don't know what we're doing. And we don't know how we're going to do this. And so there was trepidation. There was some anxiety that came previous to that. But now we're coming to the end of it, beginning to realize again just the simple power, the potency of cleaning things up, putting things in order, changing configurations. developing new perspective on stuff just by changing around where it sits in the room. It's freaking exciting, man. And it exerts a feeling of control. If you live in a chaotic environment, one of the things you lose is kind of a control of things. But then you throw stuff away, you organize stuff, you put it in its proper place. You're exercising a control over your physical space, contributes to a sense of control over your existential space, over your life. Now, this is all positive stuff, man. It is the antidote to chaos. Organization is the antidote to chaos. And so I've been living in a chaos. It sucks. Don't like it. Feel very agitated. Now I'm beginning to live in an organized space, and it feels so much better. And so if you sense that you are in a chaos personally, take a look at your space and set yourself to organizing it. Set yourself to reestablishing order and control in your physical space and see what that does to you mentally. It's profound, man. There was another quote that says, if your space is cluttered, you are cluttered. Cleaning is a spiritual practice. That's why I say you go back to Buddhist monks, you go back to these ancient traditions and the practitioners of them. Buddhism, Shinto, a lot of that stuff is so minimalist, so ordered, so precise. And there's a reason for that. It is a respect and a reverence for your space. And it is a balm, an existential balm, BALM, on your spirit and soul. It's a reverence, and creating inspiring spaces will result in inspiring experiences. But if you have an awful, chaotic, cluttered space, it will create awful, chaotic, cluttered experiences. And I'm so stoked on it, man. I have not been stoked on anything like I am right now. So excited about reestablishing order in the jam space. So excited about what might come now in the little studio, whether that's writing or whatever it is. Just wanting to be here again, and the adjacent thing, the corollary of the furniture coming back into here and decluttering the other spaces in the house. It's just so exciting to create this environment, and I feel really good about it. And that's really the essence of this week's podcast, kids, apart from how great All Saints is. And, you got to check out the booty calls in your own life. That's a spiritual thing as well. Just this notion of decluttering the exterior to declutter the interior, exerting this control, order, comfort, energy. It's real and it's profound. And I'm just realizing it again, and maybe it can help you too. If you're feeling that chaos in your life, take a look at your space. Take a look at your car. Take a look at your office or wherever you work. Take a look at whether it's organized or not. Is that causing your agitation? Is it reflecting what's going on inside of you? Really potent stuff, man. And that's what I'm giving you this week for the first episode back in my almost rebuilt little studio. I'm just feeling really, really good about it. And if you're feeling really, really good about it, you might consider supporting this podcast on Patreon. There is a Patreon page, patreon.com/JohnHuffPodcast, where for the low, low price of $5 a month, my one membership tier, you can support the program. I like Patreon because it's voluntary. It is the goodness of your heart that says, I like what this guy is doing. To me, it's worth $1.25 an episode to support him. I would so appreciate you doing that. Patreon.com/JohnHuffPodcast. Don't want to do that? That's cool. I'm making kind of a plea right now because I'm having trouble, kids. All right. I'm having trouble getting the podcast in front of people. I'm doing the social media stuff, trying different things. You may have noticed that if you're following along, Instagram, Facebook, the John Huff Podcast. People aren't seeing it. I don't know if that's an algorithm thing. I don't know if Meta's messing with me. People aren't seeing it. So do me a little favor, kids. If you wouldn't mind, if you want to help out, want to do it and it's easy and it's free, Share an episode this week. You like this one, you like another one. Share it to your followers. Or when I put out some teasers this week, some advertising for this episode, share it around. Do me a solid. Will you do me a solid and just share it around? Because I've played the game. Played the TikTok game for a while. I've played the Instagram Reels game. And I've played the Facebook boosted posts game. And it all amounts to nothing. I get followed by a lot of bots. I get solicited by attractive women who have 6 posts on their Instagram. And it's just like, okay, this is all fake and stupid, right? The only thing that actually works is genuine word of mouth. And that can be digital. So if you share, that's word of mouth. If you tell a friend there's a podcast you might enjoy listening to, I would appreciate it because I am trying to grow this thing. And the traditional methods don't seem to amount to much as far as I can tell. You know, if I get a reel that gets a few views, it doesn't necessarily translate. It's very, very weird. And I don't like doing a lot of that stuff. It's just part of the game. I understand that. But nothing beats word of mouth. So this week, if you could do me a solid in honor of All Saints, share an episode, share a teaser, share an ad that I put out, whatever. I would certainly appreciate it. And thank you so kindly. Reviews. I continue to solicit reviews. I feel a little bit slimy doing so. You know, the self-promotion part of this does not sit well with me a lot of the time. Could use some reviews, could use some ratings on your favorite podcast platform. Anything like that just boosts me a little bit against the legions of celebrity podcasts who have built-in followers and marketing departments. Trying to offer something edifying here, something that I hope is of value to people out there. So if you can help me out this week in particular, just pushing an episode, maybe dropping a rating and review, I would certainly appreciate that. I will plug very quickly my merch, john-huff.com/shop. Got some cool t-shirts. Got some cool mugs, man. Got some stuff that you can purchase there for yourself or for the podcast lover in your life that just represents a little. Thank you to everybody who has done any or all of that so far. I value you so freaking much. You are the reason that this podcast still exists, okay? There have been times over the past 4 years, 4.5 now, that I've been doing this when it's felt like the only real smart thing to do is pack it in. And a couple of times I have packed it in, actually. The reason I stick around is that there are just people like those of you who I've just talked about who support, who warm my cockles, and I thank you so much for it. Gonna stop plugging now, patreon.com/JohnHuffPodcast. Thank you so much again. Before we go, kids, before we sign off for this week, can I just say a brief lament for the great Richard Moll? Richard Moll, who played Bull on Night Court. You know by now that Night Court is one of my favorite shows of all freaking time. Very underrated for its clever writing and its heart. You know, it's just remembered by most people as being ribald and kind of goofy. And it was, but underneath the ribaldness, the ribaldry, the ribaldry, and the goofiness was a show that was really, really clever and had a lot of heart, man. And it's one of my favorite shows of all time. I've tried hard to watch the new iteration of it, and it's okay, but it's just not the same. You know, it hasn't got my cast apart from John Larroquette, and they're not using him the way they used to. And it's trying really hard to recreate the vibe of 40 years ago, and you just can't do it, man. You just can't do it. That cast, those writers, that time, you can't recreate it now. And so what you get is kind of a reasonable hand-drawn facsimile of the original Night Court. They're trying to shoehorn in the goofiness that I think was really organic before. Very, very tough to do. And I don't love it. I've watched it and I'll keep watching it if I see an episode pop up. But it's not the same for me. And Bull Shannon, Richard Moll, was just a big part of the original cast. I had hoped that he would turn up on the new show at some point. Bull would be there. But he's 80 years old, kids. And, you know, shuffled off this giant mortal coil of his, 6'8". It was the tallest cast of all time. You know, Harry Anderson was like 6'3", John Larroquette's 6'4", Richard Moll 6'8", Charles Robinson was, 6'3" or 4, just a giant cast. I remember seeing them. They won like an Emmy or something, a daytime Emmy, whatever. That wouldn't have been a daytime Emmy. They won an Emmy, I think. And they all went up on stage to collect the award. And it was just a bunch of giants and Marky Post. And it was wild how tall that cast was, but they were great. That show was great, and I miss it a lot. And I'm sad that Richard Moll has died, because he was a big part of it. And that original cast is going fast, kids. Harry Anderson is gone. Marky Post is gone. Charles Robinson is gone. Selma Diamond, of course, is gone. And how much longer will we have Marsha Warfield and some of the others, and John Larroquette himself? And it's sad, and Suzanne Summers died, and I loved Three's Company when I was a kid. Although, my favorite blonde roommate on the show was not Chrissy, it was Terry the nurse. Priscilla Barnes. But another element of childhood, Suzanne Summers is gone. And I was never a Friends guy, but Matthew Perry is gone. It's weird. It's almost like music was generational. Like, I play with people who are 4 or 5 years younger than me, and they do not know, or if they do not really enjoy the glam metal that was in vogue when I was in high school. They're Nirvana people, Soundgarden people. So it is, I think, with TV. So people my age were and are Seinfeld people. And then people a few years younger than me are Friends people. And it causes a real problem. Because I hated Friends. I've tried to watch Friends and I hated it. Still do. Don't like it. Something about that show just irritates me. But then, not everybody loves Seinfeld either, and those people probably need to see their doctors. But hey, Matthew Perry has passed away very young, early 50s. Technically, I'm early 50s, And I know he had kind of a troubled history, and that's too bad. So, a lament for him, a lament for Suzanne Summers, a lament for Richard Moll, Bull Shannon himself. What a great actor. That character was so convincing. How he could be so dense and so sweet and so menacing. Really, really a great actor, Richard Moll. Probably underrated. Because he was a support actor in that show, a secondary sort of character. But so much of it he carried, Just the sort of presence that he had. And it's hard not to when you're 6'8" and your head is shaved. Which was pretty unusual, on a white guy. Back in the 80s, that was not what white dudes did back then. So he really stood out for that reason. But he was great on that show, and I missed that show. And I still watch the reruns, man. I can get them on my Plex server, and that's cool. Farewell to all of them and to what they brought to our youths. I'm dragging out this lamentation. I want to thank you for listening. I want to thank you for enduring with me the past 4 months. We're almost there, kids. We're almost there. Hope this episode sounds okay. We'll find out, I guess, in the editing process. Thanks for coming this far with me. I hope you are well. I'm going to shutting up. Do remember that good things happen when you put yourself out there, kids, all right? I will check in with you next week. Drop me a line. Let me know how you're doing. Let me know what you're listening to. Let me know if this clutter thing affects you in the same way. I'm very curious about how other people experience that, Thanks for listening. I'm going to go now. And hey, kids, in case I didn't say it, I'll check you later. Yeah. Thought about picking a song of the week for some of these episodes that are not necessarily musically themed or about musical artists. And I would sing an All Saints song for you, but I don't know any of them. The song for this week might have been Get It Right by Dirty Looks. And I would sing that, but there's no duplicating Henrik Ostergaard's vocals. But Get It Right from Cool from the Wire, one of my favorite songs and favorite albums of all freaking time. Go check it out.